because I know an orchestra, you're paying each musician and it's time and money, right?
Yes.
So it's like, was it just the day of, or did you guys have a rehearsal before? Like, how did that work out?
Well, it's a great question. From the moment we said, nice to meet you, to the musicians, to the moment we say goodbye, thank you, we had 9 hours.
Wow. Holy smokes. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Innersleeve Music Podcast, the podcast taking a behind-the-scenes look at all things music. Cassius Morris here, Joe Pacheco joining me on the line. What's happening, brother?
Doing good, my man. Doing good, man. Day by day, excited to talk about Eliana Cuevas today.
That's right. An awesome artist here joining us on Innersleeve. She had a lot to tell about expanding her musical output and really everything that she's been doing musically, coming to Canada and much, much more. So there's a ton of awesome topics. Also coming right up, the Megadeth and Bullet for My Valentine concert review. I went and caught the show last night to bring the exclusive SoundMojo scoop. So make sure to stay tuned in just a moment. And Joe's excited. We got it coming up. Rock legends Aerosmith have announced their farewell tour, which is going to be set to begin in September 2023. The Peace Out tour is going to start in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania with the Black Crowes. And this looks like it's really going to be it for Aerosmith, Joe.
I don't know, man. I think we've been I think we've been told or sold this story many, many times, but I'll give them, as they say, right? Innocent until proven guilty kind of thing. This is cool. The Black Crowes, man. Like, I haven't heard, seen, or, knew they were still on tour and doing stuff, so this is exciting. And it's a perfect fit for Aerosmith. Personally, never saw them, Aerosmith. Been around.
Me either.
So like, I'm thinking, farewell tour, and I think what we spoke about before, they might be finishing the tour here in Montreal. So,
unless they add more dates, right?
Yeah, right. So that's it. So like, I think I would, give it a shot to at least get to see them once. I missed Van Halen, so like, not that I don't really regret that kind of stuff, but I sort of do. Like, it would have been nice to have seen it. So kind of something similar here. You, any plans?
I don't plan to go to this tour, but Aerosmith is always a band I wanted to go see. Like, I was in Vegas while they had their residency. I was walking through the hotel and I'm like, there's a bunch of people in Aerosmith shirts. And then I see, Aerosmith playing here for like a month. I was like, what? So it's just like, I've always been close to seeing them, but I've never actually pulled the trigger. I want to ask you this, Joe. If you were a betting man, like, would you bet that they're going to actually retire? Or like, because I'm honestly, I feel like it's shooting yourself in the foot almost. I mean, especially I have like PTSD after Motley Crue. They signed agreements. They sat next to a tombstone with their name, and here they are on stage as we speak. It's hard to believe.
Like, what do contracts and all? Like, they mean nothing at this point.
I guess not.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, it's funny because I wanted to compare them to Motley Crue in the sense of saying that, like, I at least know that this guy, Steven Tyler, can actually sing and pull it off. You know what I mean?
Probably held up one of the best in his entire genre.
Yeah. I'm sure they all have backing tracks. That whole story of backing tracks, man, that, it's like, who cares? It's been around forever, Like, do you want to go to the show and be let down and say like, oh, it didn't sound as full or as good as the album, right? I paid all this money and then like, oh, it sounds empty, like, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I'm sort of going on a tangent here, but yeah, definitely excited to catch this and see what's going on. Like, it starts, when does it, okay, right here, begins September 2023.
That's right. And they're going to have THX sound as well. So apparently the movie sound company is going to be modifying all of their audio, all their vocals and their guitars. And their quote is saying they don't want you to miss a second. I guess they don't want you to miss a thing, Joe. They miss the opportunity.
I saw that coming. Yeah. I think they did that on purpose too, but I guess it's interesting. I don't know, like I said, I'll go see it because if it's really their farewell, I would definitely enjoy it. I always think they're a great band. They always deliver. They don't like, a lot of people gave them heck for like maybe, being a little less like rock, more pop stuff. But I mean, like, it's interesting to see that this band had like a crazy second wind, like where they went like probably even bigger than they were initially. You know what I mean?
100%. I heard a rumor that their Rock Band game or their Guitar Hero game sold more than all of their music combined.
Ooh, wow.
That's a rumor that I heard. And I was like, that's hard to believe. But at the time when it came out, it was the biggest music game ever.
Yeah, I wasn't really interested in those music games, but yeah, it could be. I don't know. We'd have to dig in and check to see if that's an actual thing, you know?
Let us know if you guys ever played it, and you never know. Maybe a SoundMojo scoop coming out of Montreal for the last show of the tour.
So the moment I've been waiting for is to hear about the Megadeth concert. We purposely didn't talk about this until this moment.
I know.
So
it's so tough for us guys. Before we tape, me and Joe were like, save it. Just save your reaction because we're about to go give it on the air.
Yeah, exactly. So how was the show?
The show was awesome, Joe. So Megadeth came to the Edmonton Convention Center here in Edmonton, Alberta, with openers Bullet for My Valentine. And, you know, I say openers sort of with hesitance, Joe, because to me, this is more of a co-headline bill. Bullet, you know, a pretty big band and definitely a band that drew a crowd. One of the coolest things that I noticed, you know, as we entered the venue was even before the lights went down, people were chanting Bullet, Bullet, Bullet. And it was crazy. Like it almost sounded like a concert album just because of like the exaggerated hype of the crowd. And guys, that was the biggest theme of this show. The audience was so excited to see Megadeth and Bullet. Like they were just happy to be out. It was a Monday night, but still the energy was up and the place was full. But I think the capacity is about 5,000 people.
Okay.
And I would say the place was pretty close to full. You know, I don't know if you've ever seen Megadeth, Joe, or what type of venue you're used to them in, but last time I saw them in an arena. Now this was smaller.
Well, I saw them a long time ago. We're talking 90s here, but like it was also in an arena, but like a smaller arena that a lot of shows, the smaller shows used to go to if they couldn't fill up the Bell Center, which we have here is like a 22,000 seater. I think that one was about, I don't know, I'm guesstimating basically 6,000 to 7,000. I saw Pantera there. I saw Skid Row there. I saw, lots of Ozzy, all those bands there, and Megadeth included. And I really enjoyed that show. It was good. It was the Euthanasia album, so I'm dating
myself. So with Marty.
Yeah, of course, with Marty.
Wow.
I remember seeing them. Oh no, actually not true. I did see them in the 2000s with Gigantor. It was a massive.
Okay.
That's the name of it, Gigantor. It was everybody, Nevermore, Dream Theater, like who's who of all metal rock. It was a whole day thing. It started like at 4 in the afternoon, finished at midnight.
So cool.
I did get to see. I got to see Megadeth. I think it was Chris Broderick, the guitar at the time.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, the ever-changing lineup of Megadeth, they had a new lineup tonight as well, relatively new since the whole David Ellefson situation at this show. But yeah, you know, Bullet for My Valentine, they came out, and again, the crowd was going crazy. And right before they came to the stage, Joe, I have to throw this in, they were playing, of course, all the rock and metal hits on the speakers, and they played Walk by Pantera. And we're going to cut to this clip. The audience, full voice, was singing along, respect, walk, and it was shaking the arena. And I was like, this is going to be a good show because they're obviously ready.
That reminded me of when I went to see Pantera. I'm not even joking when I say this because this is a story, and my wife is like, tired of hearing me say this story but it's so cool that when you go to a show and the lights go off, everybody goes crazy, right? And then Pantera starts to play. I'm not kidding you. I saw 6 stretchers leave with people in the pit in the first song or two. ushered out. I was like, I'm so glad I'm never going in the center there again, you know, like.
Oh my gosh, that's insane. And I mean, peak Pantera, yeah, that's definitely a war zone to go in there. Yeah, you know, I wasn't privy to too many mosh pits during this show, necessarily during Megadeth. Once Bullet took the stage, though, they definitely did have some pits. You know, Bullet was full of energy. Their singer was encouraging everybody to just bring up the energy level, to yell, to sing, and they were really working the crowd. The guys on guitar and bass, not as much interactive. They were sort of just back there in their own world, but that's kind of how a lot of bands are, right? This was actually my first time hearing them guys. Like me and my buddy, you know, we put on a couple songs earlier yesterday. That was my first time hearing them. So as a first reaction, I have to say, like, they definitely got a great reaction from me. And they were a good opener for Megadeth, who took the stage promptly at 9:15 p.m. Now,
just curious to know what song did they launch with? Or am I jumping?
Megadeth launched with Hangar 18.
Oh, sick. I was thinking either Holy Wars or Hangar 18 or something like that. Yeah, very cool.
Yep, Hangar 18.
Straight out with a banger. Like people must have been already bang right into it.
It was insane, man. And it was pandemonium because all throughout the night there was crowd surfers, but the second Megadeth took the stage, the crowd surfing was at an all-time high. And of course I was shooting in the photo pit right up front, so the whole time I was dodging crowd surfers because, you know, there's people coming from behind me, there's people jumping. Also in the pit for Megadeth, they had a fan experience that was going on. Okay. So in the pit was security, all the photographers, and then a bunch of fans that were just right there in the pit.
Awesome.
You should have seen the looks on these fans' faces, Joe. They were just, it's like they were at Disneyland, because you think about it, you know, you and I have shot shows, but for somebody who's never shot a show to go into the pit like that with their favorite artist, I mean, that's a dream, you know? So I feel like if you're going to charge fans for the meet and greet, that's not a bad package, you know, make it worth it.
Yeah, no, I have a similar experience when I got to shoot Alice in Chains at like an outdoor festival here, but I had like an all access pass for one of the other artists, you know, Joan Jett at the time. But the security guard, after 3 songs, they usually usher you out. So I was saying, wait, I have this pass, you know? And the guy was like, I don't know. And he called somebody, and then somebody said, yeah, it's fine. So it was just me and 2 other buddies in that zone with
That's awesome.
People behind us. And we're just there watching, having a beer and watching. And like, Inez looking at us like, who are these 3 guys? You know,
seriously, who the heck is this guy?
We're just, so yeah, that's definitely a great experience, you know, to be right there. Curious, how was Mr. Mustaine?
Mr. Mustaine, you know, he was good. I mean, it's definitely, you know, he's not a young guy. That's the main thing. And I don't say that in a negative way. I say it as a positive, because to see him come out and shred the way that he does is insanely impressive.
Plus, I think he beat cancer or something.
Yeah, he just beat cancer. The guy was dead for 3 minutes as well. You know, he beat everything. He's beat every adversity that you could beat, basically, in life. Be it from being kicked out of his band to cancer to addiction.
That comes from the guy who wrote the 4 Horsemen, right?
Right, yeah. It has to be. You know what I mean? So, you know, yeah, seeing him in the flesh, it was like almost a little bit surreal, because I'm like, the odds have been against this guy. And you know, to me, Dave Mustaine is a story of perseverance. Like, he's still here after all these years. And also, I love the confidence. Like, Dave Mustaine is the biggest Megadeth fan. He's the runner of his own fan club, and that passion and drive is what kept him going, you know?
Yeah, for real. Like, it shows like it's someone. I love it when artists, you can just tell the genuine appreciation for the fan. Not that artists don't have appreciation. They obviously do, you know, because that's what keeps them up there. But just like when they actually really show it genuinely, not just like it's just part of the, we love you, Montreal. We
exactly.
We know
you're the greatest.
You know, that kind of stuff. But like, I always bring up this example of, you know, very contrasting worlds there from Megadeth, but Poison. What's the singer name again? Oh, Brett
Michael. Yeah.
You know, and like last time I saw him, dude, like the lights were down and they're already tearing down, and he's still shaking fans' hands in the front row, you know? So that impressed me.
That's amazing. Yeah, the dedication is real. You know, yeah, it was cool. So they came out, they started with Hangar 18, then they went into Dread and the Fugitive Mind and Angry Again, and then I said, okay, that's my 3 songs, Joe, because in our request, it said you got 3 songs. As I'm leaving, somebody taps me on the shoulder and goes, you guys have 4 songs tonight. So I said, okay, here we go. We got another song. And then we got Sweat and Bullets.
That's
yeah,
cool.
Man.
That's a cool start to a show. And I think about it because Angry Again, I love that song. That's from a soundtrack, right? And then, oh, wow, Sweat and Bullets.
They started with hits after hit after hit. They did a couple, you know, current songs, a couple new songs, you know, and throughout the night it was cool. They also broke it up into different sections than I've ever seen for a Megadeth show. They had like a bass and drum solo, and then they had a bass and guitar solo where they were trading licks. Kind of good opportunities for Dave to go relax, because that's when he went off stage. So I think that was cool. You know, you see that happen, you know, with a lot of groups. Ozzy and Sabbath would do that. And it's good to, you know, keep the pace of the show, because it is hard. I mean, Joe, I'm standing there in the audience exhausted. And I'm like, how is this guy doing this? Yeah, I'm exhausted just watching the guy. So, you know, it was surreal.
I learned that young too. Like, you do a half-hour set opening up for a band, and you realize, wow, I'm like, as if I went to the gym for like 3 hours, you know, like just So yeah, and then night after night of doing that. But then again, you feed off that energy that the people are giving back to you, and you just keep going. How many times do you like? These guys are probably playing with a flu, cold a lot of times, right?
Yeah.
And it's like as soon as the show's over, you just you crash and you go and sleep on your on the tour bus, you know.
Exactly. It was crazy to see. They continued to do tons of hits. They played Tornado of Souls, Trust, A Tout Le Monde, Symphony of Destruction. And Peace Sells. So, that ultimately was cool. It was a 14-song set that they ended with Holy Wars, which was the one song I said, I'm going to go crazy if I don't hear this song. We have to hear this song. And we ended up getting that. So, wow.
I mean, if I've grew up with Megadeth, so Peace Sells, all that stuff. I love it. But like Holy Wars, it's just on another level, that riff, that song. It was the first time I was so excited back then when I saw that Marty, because I was already a big Marty fan from his solo career. And then I saw him, what? Marty's in Megadeth? Like, holy
it's
cow.
Insane.
Like, never, something I would have never dreamed of. And then you get that album, those two albums back to back, Countdown and I forgot already where Holy Wars is on.
Yeah. Why am I not remembering it either?
It's because we're on the spot.
Rest in Peace.
Rest in peace. There you go.
Yeah, okay. Jeez. Come on. I'm going to get my Metalhead card revoked here.
Yeah, I know. Seriously, me too. But,
that was the album that they played the most songs off, by the way. Rest in Peace was the majority of songs played from the night.
They have a lot of great albums, but honestly, I think that's their like Led Zeppelin 4 or whatever. You know, that what's the Pink Floyd one, right?
The Wall.
Yeah, The Wall or Dark Side of the Moon.
Dark Side, yeah.
Like for Megadeth, because there's so many good albums, but there's always one or two that just like stand out. So overall, like, would you recommend that our audience and the SoundMojoites that are into Megadeth go?
Honestly, yes. Overall, I would say that this show was an 8.5 out of 10. I don't think there was a whole lot that could have made it better. It lost a 1.5 for me, mostly because of the venue. That venue is really rough on sound. It's basically all tile flooring, and like the way it's built, it's really a challenge for the sound.
It's interesting though, that when you think about that, they're made for hockey or sports or whatever environment, but yet we use them for these entertainment things because of the amount of people they can hold. They're not designed for that. But having said that, because that's probably that was an old building, right? Probably built in the 80s or the 70s or whatever.
This one it's like a convention center. So they have like big like balls there and stuff.
It's interesting because like all the last couple of shows I've been to, especially here at the new, it's maybe like 6 years old. So every show, like Ghost, I was telling you, it sounded incredible. It sounded very clean, so like the technology is there. The shows are all going to sound good. Now it all depends on the environment you're in, right?
No question about that. So, I'll give it an 8.5 out of 10. And ultimately, I would say if you are a fan of Megadeth in Canada, swing by this tour. Tickets aren't too bad, and you'll have a great time with you and your friends. Hopping over to the SoundMojo Community tab, of course, the spot where we post different polls and questions to see what you guys are watching and listening to. Here we ask Bohemian Rhapsody versus Stairway to Heaven. Of course, two iconic songs.
Our audience voted 50-50.
Wow, right down the middle. That's a first for us.
It's interesting because when I put this together, I was like, man, I would have a hard time choosing this. I think personally I would edge out Stairway to Heaven. Only probably because I've known it longer, since like a lot longer than Bohemian. But I mean, like, this is a sick toss up.
It's really a terrible thing to make a metalhead pick. I would say Stairway gets the edge for me just because it's more. It almost feels a little bit more serious, and maybe it's about taking yourself too seriously, perhaps, which can be a bad thing. But I mean, Bohemian, it feels like there's more room for parody. As an actual musical composition, I think Stairway might be better. But those are rough words, Joe, because we're talking about two classics. I can't pick.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, like, when you think of the genius of Bohemian, like the production that went behind it, that never heard this in a rock context before, very innovative. That's what makes it so damn hard. Plus, they're both fantastic singers, right? Like, it's just, this is like, I didn't expect to come out clean out of this one, but I'm very happy that it was a even split down the middle.
Yeah, it's definitely cool to see. Let us know what you think down below in the comments. Here we ask Ray Charles versus Frank Sinatra.
Our audience picked 48% for Ray Charles and 52% for Blue Eyes himself, Frank Sinatra.
Boy, these are getting diabolical, Joe. This is too hard for me to pick. I would say Frank Sinatra, he takes the edge for me just because of his whole persona. Ray Charles was a character for sure, but, Sinatra, chairman of the board, he's got to take it from me.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you personally just because, I did choose him because I love... particularly for one song, which is a personal favorite, which is a Brazilian cover he did of Agua de Bebe, as they call it, drinking water or whatever. And when I heard his voice on that, the warmth of his voice, the roundness of his voice, and then the orchestra following him behind, it was just like, it was magic. So for me, it would just edge out Ray, because Ray is a legend. I mean, what else could be said about Ray Charles? I mean, but I was just like so happy that our audience again picked this as a, almost literally 50-50 almost down the middle.
Let us know who you picked down below in the comments. Here we ask, which instrument do you wish you could play? Piano, guitar, drums, or bass guitar?
Our audience picked 29% for piano, 46% for guitar, 16% for drums, and a measly little 9% for bass.
I feel like guitar is so glamorized, like in the movies, John Mayer, everybody wants to play guitar.
Well, this is what I noticed as well. I knew this was going to be the result because guitar has just been in your face for the last 60 years. It's not an easy instrument. Not that any of them are easy. It's not an easy instrument to play, but it's like, I think it's sort of, you think guitar, you think cool, in my book.
Exactly. It's also portable. You can take it different places. There's a lot of variations of guitar. So I think it makes more sense for guitar instead of piano. It has to be more stationary.
Yeah, same thing with drums, right? But and what's funny is that you're right, like, especially with the plugins today, where like for a couple $100 you get like world class amps and all that stuff. Same thing with piano. I mean, you could, with software, there's a ton of piano libraries, so you wouldn't have to carry it around. But yeah, I get your point. Is there one that you would love to play or like to play?
I'm a drummer, so I've always wanted to play guitar. I feel like they want to be us, we want to be them type of thing. And honestly, I tried to teach myself, but I haven't stuck with it. What about you?
I initially, as a kid, wanted to play drums. I love drums. I love listening to drums.
It's true.
But I ended up picking up the guitar because there was a guitar around. My brother had one, and that's it. It was just easier, easy access. Still to this day, I still like, I'm gonna looking for some stuff that I don't use anymore in the studio to sell, so I could buy myself a drum kit, even if it's an electronic drum kit that I can plop in my earphones at 2 a.m. and just rock out to like 311 songs or whatever the hell maybe in my mood at the time. But definitely drums. Yeah, I definitely like drums. I mean, piano, like I'll dabble, a little bit, but I wouldn't be able to play you a tune, that's for sure.
Let us know what you would pick down below in the comments. Now it's time to hop into the guest portion of today's podcast. It was a pleasure to be joined by Eliana Cuevas, who's going to be talking about her new album and performance film, Sere Libre. Again, I'm saying the French version of that, but I'm doing my best. Going back to my background here. The record and project is going to be released everywhere on May 12th via Alma Records. And it's really incredible, Joe. This is a story, guys, of something that started off as, a smaller idea. And, through the pandemic, they ultimately ended up with a performance film on their hands. It was going to be just a one-off show. Now they, made it all the way to Cineplex and IMAX, having their show aired in the actual theater. So it's incredible. And, the Venezuelan-born Toronto artist and performer, Eliana Cuevas, joins us right now. Eliana, thank you so much for joining us on the Innersleeve Music Podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
100%. So obviously May 12th is going to be a massive day for you. You have Sere Libre that's going to be coming out. My apologies on the pronunciation there. I tried my best. Okay. Of course, the theme on freedom, maybe if you could just talk to us about the title of this project.
Okay. Sere Libre, it means I will be free in Spanish. And it is a song that I dedicate to Venezuela, my native land. That's where I'm from. I'm sure lots of people are aware there have been a lot of issues, right, in my country. So I do hope for a better future, for things to improve. So that's why it is an affirmative statement in the future. Yeah. I will be free. However, that song also, and the title, right, and the message behind it, it's very much a message that I think we can all relate to, because it is also a way of encouraging people to free themselves from whatever is holding them back. Because I think, even in our daily lives, even in a place like in Toronto, in a first world country in Canada, we a lot of times can put limitations on ourselves, so it is a way to encourage people, to free themselves, but I dedicated to Venezuela. I haven't been there in many years, but I always think about my roots and about my family and about my culture. And I'm trying, and I've been trying for years with my last few projects to kind of elevate, my country and the beautiful things that it still can offer in spite of all the problems, to try and focus on the positive things, our rich culture, the good people, as opposed to focusing on the negative, which people often tend to do. And especially if you look at the news, you often focus on the negative. So I'm trying to do the opposite, to focus on the positive. I'll leave the news channels and newspapers to do all that.
It's a happier life, right?
Yeah. It happened a couple of times recently. I live here in Toronto, like you've heard about all the things that happen on the TTC, for example, right? Which concerns people. But the other day, I was with my daughter and a kind man gave my young daughter a seat. And I'm like, there are good people. Let's just think about the good people. Let's focus on the good people,
Need someone to report on that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Because it's really, you can get depressed. You can get down just thinking about all the bad stuff. Yeah. Right. The other day with my husband, we went for a walk. My husband, who also happens to be the producer, arranger, and conductor of the orchestra. But we went for a walk at the park, and he dropped his keys, the car keys. Right. And, we thought, oh my gosh, when it was in Downsview Park. I don't know if you're familiar, but it's a pretty big park, right?
Right.
And it took a few days, but then the police called us because somebody turned them in. And I'm like, I love this. They're wonderful people out there, right?
That's amazing. And you always see the dog piling of, I've seen people sharing a video of someone dropping their phone in Japan, and then everyone runs to run it back to them. And they say, this would never happen in Canada, but that's not necessarily the case, right? You just got to poke around and keep your eyes open for the positive.
Exactly. So anyway, I'm trying, in life and in my music, trying to look at the good things, that are out there, to keep a positive outlook, and with this project, elevate my culture and try to also push myself. It's definitely been the most challenging, ambitious project, musical project of my life. But it's been very rewarding. It was a very rewarding experience, very risky, I will say, because, I had never worked with an orchestra before. It was my first time, and we did it in the middle of COVID. It was like towards the end, but we were dealing with restrictions.
Right.
And, it's a very expensive project too, to try and do something like this with an orchestra. So we recorded live off the floor, right? We had a limited amount of time, and it's like, hopefully I don't catch a cold. Hopefully nobody catches COVID and isn't able to make it. And hopefully everybody's at the top of their game, because we couldn't go into the studio later on and fix things. This is like what we did. What you hear is what we did live off the floor.
Was that the biggest challenge with working with an orchestra, or were there other big challenges that maybe you couldn't have anticipated?
To be honest, everything was challenging, but I knew going into it, that it would be a challenge. That's just the nature of the project, right?
Yeah.
And the situation that we were in, because we were still dealing with restrictions, right? Initially I was going to do we did it with the funding, right, from the Canada Council and the Ontario Arts Council, and initially the plan was to do a concert with an audience, right? But then COVID came, and it took me a while. That we were trying to figure out, what do we do now? What do we do? And then, we decided to record. It's like, okay, well, let's do the concert, but let's record it. We can't have an audience. Let's record it, right? And it adds a lot more pressure when you're recording too, because there's just a lot more that you have to take into consideration. Often when you're going and record an album, you go into a studio and you can have isolation, when you're recording each of the instruments. Because then when you mix it later on, if you turn up the violins, you don't want to turn up the drums too, right? Like when you're trying to mix the levels or do things like that. But when you're doing it live, there's no isolation. So basically you can hear, what everybody else is doing. So we just have to get it right because
live off the floor for real,
Yeah, because we can't go, there is all kinds of technology to help you polish things later on. But this was very, it was a risk. But when you have great players and great musicians, you can do what we did. I'm so happy, that it all worked out the way it did. For me as a vocalist, and also the focus, right, is usually like in the vocalist. It's just that's just the way it usually works. But I had never had to record my voice, like do like an audio recording and also do video at the same time, in this kind of setting. Like, so you really can capture everything, like every little bit. Often if you do a music video, you already have the music and then you just go and do the video and the story and, you worry about that, right? But in this setting, we were recording the audio as well. So I had to keep in mind, like the distance of my mouth from the microphone. And for example, in terms of like monitors and things like that, when you do a live concert, you can have your monitors, no problem. In that situation, the monitors had to be really, really quiet because, it was with the strings. So if the vocal was too loud, it would get into the violins and the, so it was not, it's complicated. Yeah, it was very complicated. So it was okay. So it was not the ideal level, like the comfort level that I'm used to. It had to be less, because, well, this is what we're doing, but we're going to try and we're going to do, we're going to make it work, So it was very challenging. There were all these little things, so many details, to keep in mind. And then the cameras were on. So I had to make it look easy, or do my best, It's like, okay, I have to be charming, So, don't get too far away from the mic, but don't let them know that you're worried about how far you're from the mic. So yeah, it was such a challenge. It was such a, great learning curve. And I hadn't really done something like this before. So it was exciting. Wow. It was scary. And I also, the classical musicians in the orchestra, it's a very different community, right? I usually work with jazz musicians, world music musicians, and it's a very different environment, very different, right? So quite often, we can feel a little bit intimidated, but the classical world, we don't really know, how it works, but it's different. We know it's very different. So I try to also not be too worried about that. It's just it's fine. I don't know these players. We had a limited amount of time to do it. I was just meeting them for the first time. It's like, okay, but everybody was fantastic. We worked with a wonderful violinist named Rebecca Wolfstein. She was a contractor. She was our connection with the classical world. And what we wanted was to find, classical players that were incredible, of course, but that were also versatile and that were able to work with rhythms, with Latin rhythms, with, something different, than classical music. And she did an incredible job helping us find the right musicians for this. Because, it was great. Like I said, we didn't have a lot of time to do it. So we just needed to make sure we had the right people to be able to do a great job. And it worked so well,
One would say that you've worked to get to this point, right? That's all your skills and talents all at the same time. And like, I understand, because like when you're in the studio, now you have to also think of the cameras looking at me. I have to nail my performance, and and then think of all these, so many moving parts. And as you said, like, I'm just curious as how long did it take, in the sense of like, because I know an orchestra, you're paying each musician and you know, it's time
Yeah.
and money, right?
Yes.
So it's like, was it just the day of, or did you guys have a rehearsal before? Like, how did that work out?
Well, it's a great question. From the moment we said nice to meet you to the musicians to the moment we say goodbye, thank you, we had 9 hours.
Wow. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
So that sort of puts into perspective the pressure that was mounting,
Yeah. Oh,
right?
yeah. The pressure. We booked the theater the day before, right? So we did a 3-hour rehearsal.
Okay.
The day before, the day we went and did the shooting, right? And the musicians came, and then we were working with incredible engineers, audio engineers too, right? Because you have to, right? We had to bring recording engineers to the theater, because doing live audio and doing recording is very different. So they came on the day. So the rehearsal was also a setup, like they set up all the mics.
Yeah.
We decided, you sometimes in these kinds of situations, you can use like in-ear monitors, right, to hear everybody, but that takes a lot of time to adjust. And sometimes you can also feel like you're kind of distanced, like it's not, I don't particularly like in-ears, plus it's, it doesn't look great, like, look, check it out, right? So I was thinking, okay, no, let's just do it like kind of with an acoustic feel, connected, all of us connected. And then, because we also don't have time. Imagine 27 people, and everybody within ears. Okay, can you turn this down, turn this up? Like it was
it's the whole 9 hours.
Exactly. We didn't have the time, and we didn't particularly like it anyway. The way that works, because you're kind of distanced from each other. Yeah. So we had the 3 hours for the engineers to set up all the mics, for the videographer, the director, who was one. I mean, he had a lot of camera people working, of course, right? There were 11 cameras, but it was this one guy who was incredible, Tom Very, who had the vision and how to do, how to set up all the cameras and how to make it look good. So he was there. So it was a rehearsal, set up all the mics. It was Justin Gray was one of the audio engineers, and Patrick McGroarty, who were an amazing team. Justin Gray is also an incredible bass player, so he could read the scores and he could. He knew what was going on.
Nice.
So those 3 hours, we set everything up. We said, nice to meet you. We practiced. And the next day we had 6 hours from the moment they showed up, everybody dressed up. Let's do this. 6 hours, 7 songs.
Wow. Was there anything that you learned from this experience, like maybe that you took from the classical world back into your own music? And I'd be curious too, like, do you think that there's anything that maybe these guys took from your side of music that they use? Because like you're saying, it's such a different collaboration that sort of ended up in such a nice way.
A lot of the time, I feel we can be kind of intimidated in the jazz and world music genre. You can be kind of intimidated by the classical musicians. Now, this was, again, like I don't have a lot of experience, right? But at first, some of the people were saying, to Jeremy, right? Also, it's a conductor. Some of the people not the people that were there, like other people that we were talking to when we were doing research on how to do this. They're like, oh, you're gonna get the classical players. You gotta be like really. They're gonna eat you alive. You be careful because they're very, strict. So we were a little nervous, right? But I find that these particular musicians, even though, of course, it was very serious, especially when we first started, because we didn't even know each other, right? By the end of it, people were like, I could see that loosened up. There were more smiles. I think, it's not as as bad as a lot of the people made it out to be for us. Right. That what the experience would be like. So I still, because it was such an overwhelming experience, and I had to focus so heavily on I just have to pour my heart out and perform, because this is it. Like I can't fix it later. And I just have to make sure that I do this. So I just try to focus on that. And I feel like I didn't have enough time with them to really be able to share specific lessons. I think there's still a long way to go for me to make up my mind about the lessons, except for the fact that, it's not as bad as some of the people made it out to be. Because, seriously, a lot of people were trying to put the fear of God into us, like, oh, I don't know, you guys this is crazy. You're trying to do this, So Jeremy and I, just try to be like, okay, strong, confident, we know what we're doing. We got this, like trying to,
Moving forward.
make sure, trying to make sure that we share this confident, outlook or appearance, perhaps, with the player, so that everybody would be okay, as opposed to being super nervous and like, I don't know, is this gonna work?
Definitely not the right energy to give off, right? Especially
exactly.
The first time.
So just trying to be, because we were meeting them for the first time. And then, the next day, again, it was 6 hours. So we couldn't do many takes. We just, a couple of takes per song. And this is what we have to work with. And you can't really go fix it later because everybody's in each other's mics. So, it was, it was very, very demanding. And by the end, I don't know if you've heard, there's the next single that we're putting out, which is the last track on the album, was one of the hardest songs. And for me, it's very fast and, it's just very demanding vocally. But we did it at the end because we weren't sure if we were going to have time, number one, because we didn't know how it was going to go. And we also knew that it had a lot of rhythm. So we didn't know also how it would work with the orchestra, because quite often, classical players don't play this kind of music, and we didn't know if it was going to work, period. So we left it for the end, and it worked out incredibly well, but I had a massive headache by the end because of all the pressure. So because I was just like, okay, because it just, I was pouring everything, like everything I had. Yeah, when I listen to it, I know what I'm feeling, but I was just like, okay, Justin, one of the engineers, just, we did one take, we did a couple of takes, and then it's like, okay, we still don't quite have, do you guys have one more take, in you to do it? And I remember feeling, like I was a little cloth that had barely any water, and I had to just like,
just bring out that last bit.
Just this last, like, I gotta do this, And as the band leader, and kind of the focus of the whole thing, I just felt like I couldn't mess up. I just can't afford to mess up. This is really expensive. This is really time consuming. If anybody else messes up, it's better than me messing up. I can't mess up.
Please, anyone but me.
Anyone but me. Yeah, I can't mess up, right? So, and that's the take we kept. The last one, when I was like, okay, I just gotta do this, Awesome. We kept, and it was the most demanding song. Like, in a way, I thought, okay, maybe if we had done it first, I wouldn't have been feeling that way. But we also didn't know if we were going to be able to even do it, because it was, we didn't know how much time each song was going to take, and we only had 6 hours.
Yeah, it feels like an extra that you got it in, right? Like, all right, we nailed it.
Yeah, we got it in. Exactly. We got it in. And also Jeremy, so he's the conductor, right? He was the conductor, but he's a pianist. And usually my group, which is a 5-piece band, he plays the piano because he orchestrated and was conducting the orchestra. We got, he couldn't do everything, right? So we got Robert Horvath to play the piano, who's amazing too. But for this last song, Jeremy came to the theater after I showed up there earlier that day. And as he was about to leave, he's like, hey, should I bring the synth to do a solo? And I'm like, sure, like on the day off. And he killed it. It's like the most, like, it's so amazing, right? But it was kind of a spontaneous thing, not something that was planned. And it's the one song where he gets to play, and he gets to play, nice. And it's an interesting mix, with the synth and the orchestra too. It's something different,
I'm curious to know, why now? Like, have you always envisioned doing a project like this with an orchestra and all that?
Yes. I have always, it was always a dream. It was always a dream for me to record with an orchestra, to perform with an orchestra. It's just so beautiful. So many textures, so many possibilities, and Jeremy, he'd always wanted to write for orchestra as well. He had some experience before, not a lot, but he had some experience, and he wanted to do it again too. So this was an incredible thing for both of us to do, something we really wanted. And thinking ahead, I feel like this, we still have other goals, thinking forward, about this orchestra, because it is the first, but I also, we didn't do it with an audience, right? So I would like to do a concert with an audience with the Angel Falls Orchestra, which by the way, we named it after the tallest waterfall in the world, which is in Venezuela, my native country, in the national park called Canaima. So, and I think it's a way to honor, also, again, to elevate, something beautiful Venezuela has that, like, it's, that a lot of people don't know. It's really hard to get to. It's in the Amazon, but it's breathtaking, And I would like for this orchestra to become a musical entity. Like, my dream now is to turn this orchestra into a musical entity in the city, and to find ways for more world music artists and jazz musicians to have an opportunity to collaborate, or to make music in an orchestral setting. It's not something that we have an opportunity to do very often. It's very expensive. Plus, quite often, you don't, like, the orchestras are not, like, you just don't have a lot of opportunity. There's not a lot of, I don't think there are many orchestras, if any, that do that kind of work. The focus is generally classical. So my hope is that with this orchestra, this is hopefully the first, but we can collaborate and bring in other artists. There's so many incredible artists in the jazz community, in the world music community, in the city in general. There's just so much great music going on, so many incredible artists. And I know that a lot of them would love to have the opportunity to work with an orchestra. So my long-term goal, and this is like, it's going to take a while because you got to get a lot of money for this, but we will continue, to search for funding to hopefully, I would love to collaborate with other artists, to give other artists the opportunity to do something like this. I know that Jeremy, who wrote these incredible arrangements, he also wants to be able to do it more, but it's a lot of work. So we do have to find funding for it. It's not, it's really, really a lot. And Jeremy, thinking ahead, like, about doing another concert, these were 27 musicians, but he's like, well, next time maybe it should be 55.
Wow. That's amazing though.
So, so we're still ambitious. We're still trying to do more. It'll take time. I love singing in that setting. So I want to do it more, of course. But I want to bring in other people, other incredible artists that are out there. And, so it'll take time. We work.
Yeah, sounds like it's worth it though, for sure.
It's this has been very rewarding. We're both very happy with the experience and the way it went. And I know that a lot of the people involved, like Rebecca, who was the contractor, she's totally, like, happy to keep going and doing more of this. And and well, even the videographer, like Tom, he, like, everybody just was so invested, so I'm very grateful for all the contribution that everybody has made, the people that have been a part of this, of our vision, trying to create something different, something special, and pouring our hearts into it, And now we get to see it at the Cineplex, which is great. We did the video and we're thinking, okay, so now what do we do? Like, how do we make this, we want to premiere it, but just doing a video, like, anywhere is not, like, who's going to sit through that? Hey, how about we try and do it at a Cineplex? Then we make it like, let's make it as impressive as we can, and
and that's on the 11th, correct?
That's on the 11th, the day before the album comes out. Yeah.
Awesome.
And at the Cineplex in Yorkdale. Yeah. At the AVX too. So we get to experience
that's going to be quite the experience. I mean, what are your what are you anticipating to feel while you guys watch that? Because it's such a labor of love, right? I mean, it's going to be incredible to see it on the big screen.
Yes, it is overwhelming. And I will tell you, yesterday we went to do a test at the Cineplex for the first time. So we went there. I can't believe it. Like, I sort of can't believe that this is what's happening, especially considering the way it all began, which was, we're going to do a live concert. And then sort of COVID hit and we're like, okay, now what? But then, we spun things around and here we are. Like, we really, we try to turn, all the difficulties into something better than what we had initially envisioned, and I'm very happy with the results. Even though it was very risky. But yeah, the Cineplex is amazing. Like, we were there yesterday, and it's just a whole other thing. It's like, okay, if we're gonna watch a video, of a concert, this is the way to do it. And let's really watch it, and Justin Gray doing the Dolby Atmos mix, like the audio kind of the new, like one of the immersive, the new, with this new technology. Then it really makes it worth it. It really does. It really does.
Well, we hope people come and see it, and we'll definitely make sure to put a link down below, of course, to the link to the film, and of course the link to the tickets as well, to come and check it out at Cineplex. We hope you guys can check it out. One thing I'm curious about, Eliana, is you mentioned Venezuela. You were born in Venezuela, correct?
Yeah, I grew up there. I came as a teenager. At what
point did you come to Canada?
I came when I finished high school to study English.
Okay.
I didn't speak English.
And then were you planning to just stay, or was it a situation where you came to Canada for a couple of years and then you just ended up wanting to settle down in Canada?
Well, I came for a few months, and then I really loved it here. So I decided to stay, I started to connect with the musical community when I came here. It was, it was not something that I planned, but right. When I came here, I was, like I said, just studying English, but I love dancing Latin music. So I went to a Latin club, and there was a live band, and I asked them if they needed a singer. Next thing you know, I'm at a rehearsal.
There you go.
I was like 17, and I started meeting musicians, and I started performing. And, I'd been writing songs since I was like 8 or 9. But at first I was performing with cover bands until a friend encouraged me to record my original songs. And I at first I didn't feel like I was ready. I'm like, really? You think I should record them? I don't know, So then I recorded an EP. It was very well received, which was very encouraging, for me. And I decided to keep writing and keep recording my music and keep connecting, with the musical community here, which has continued to grow since I moved here until now. And I feel that it keeps getting better and better. There's such a great community. And I just, I do feel like in some ways, I feel like people here, outside of the musical community, a lot of people are not maybe aware of what we have, but it's
huge in Toronto.
It's huge. It's so rich. And I think, I honestly, we've been to New York, and New York is famous for that. But I think what we have here is just as good.
Oh, yeah. I would agree. I think it's just for some reason less on the radar on the world stage. But I think it's just, societal norms. You hear New York and LA for 50 years, and that was the standard for 50 years. So I think people just sort of keep that in their minds. But it's true, cities like Toronto, even cities like Chicago, even Vancouver's doing pretty good. So it's it's definitely interesting. So, one of the last things I really wanted to know, obviously we know what, like the Venezuelan music scene is sort of like on the world stage, like we understand what's been brought out of there. But in terms of the local scene there, how would you describe that? I'd be very curious.
Well, in Venezuela, there are a lot of really wonderful artists too. There's a lot. And it's something that is, I feel like, even though there are a lot of problems there, economically and politically, a lot of corruption, I think the music scene has continued to grow. Now, nice. I am not there, and I haven't been there in way too long. I had concerns, just living here in Canada, right? You kind of let go, of a lot of the street smarts that you kind of need to have when you're there, because you have to be, or at least when I was growing up, you always had to be on the lookout because of the crime rate. When I would go back, I found that really difficult to do again. I found it was really hard for me, but I miss going there, and I'm feeling like a really strong desire to go again. I still have a lot of family there. I think part of the reason also, I'm a mother of two, right? I have two kids, and I think after they were born, like maybe I became a little bit more protective, concerned like about kidnappings or things like that. Maybe worried too much. I shouldn't necessarily be so worried. It's something that I always try to work on, because the reality is that bad things can happen anywhere to you. But that kind of slowed me down, or held me back a little bit, and I want to go back soon and reconnect, with my family, with my culture. I've been in touch with a lot of musicians that are still there, that go there. In fact, the album that I released just before this one, I recorded with an incredible guitarist from Venezuela who actually passed away just last year. It was a very, very devastating thing for the musical community in Venezuela. He was
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, he was an incredible artist and also so intelligent and knowledge, like just so wise. It was a real loss, and musically, he was very inspiring. So I managed to do. Sorry.
His name? I'm sorry if you don't.
Aquiles Baez. Yeah, Aquiles Baez.
Okay.
I mean, in fact, I have a lot of videos with him. It was completely the opposite from what I did with this new album, right? Because it was a duo, just guitar and voice. And he's brilliant. He was brilliant. We have a lot of videos, and we were doing traditional Venezuelan music. So it was great to be able to connect with him and to do that project. He was still living there. So he came here to Canada a few years ago, and that was when we recorded, but he was very much connected with the community there. And through him, I have been in touch with a lot of other musicians that are still there. And that's how I know, even though it's not firsthand because I'm not there, I know there is definitely a lot going on in the musical community in Venezuela. And also in the classical music community. So folkloric, classical, there is a lot. So it is for Venezuelan music, it is a good time right now. So, a lot of people are not aware of this, but if you look out, for music from Venezuela, you will find a lot of great work out there.
I love that. Well, I'm going to have to definitely diversify my Spotify playlist here and go and check some of it out. And we certainly appreciate you taking the time to come and check in with us. Of course, we want everybody to go and check out Seré Libre. I'm saying it the French way. May 12th. We're going to have the link to everything down below. And Eliana, we really appreciate you taking the time to come and share your insight and experience with us. It's incredible what you're doing, and just keep up the phenomenal work, because we'll definitely be listening.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the invitation, and I hope we can meet in person.
100%. Well, I should be in Toronto eventually. Joe's close by, so I'm sure our paths will cross at some point.
You're welcome to come to the Cineplex. So come
there you
check
go,
it out
Joe.
if you're, It's going to be very unique.
I mean, just from what I've seen, it looks fantastic. It sounds fantastic. So I mean, like, to experience it in immersive audio, or it would be, a treat.
Yeah. Yes.
De una estrella de amor y en éxtasis profundo de pasión, mis versos tristes yo te brindaré y en tu lozana frente colgaré la estrella de este gran amor.
Huge shout out to Eliana Cuevas for joining us on this brand new episode of the Innersleeve Music Podcast. Joe, I feel like, we had an easy interview here. We didn't have to ask many questions, which is great. Listen, I wish every guest was like this.
No, this was hilarious, because as she was talking, I'm like, all right, I'm looking at my sheet here, and I'm like, next question. Okay, keep it in mind. Don't forget. And then she actually answered that question before I asked, and again. So it was awesome. It was great. And and what I loved about it is because it just showed her excitement that this project she's been working on for so long, and pretty much put heart and soul into it. And she's just excited to talk about it. She wants to let everybody know the excitement, the work that went into it. Another thing I really appreciated from Eliana was, a lot of times as an audience member, you look at them, you're like, wow, look at how, like, poised and, like, the performance is very, amazing and all that. But you don't realize that, like, man, she's shaking in her boots because she doesn't want to screw up a take. It's live off the floor.
Yeah.
Not only is it just, okay, one thing to record it, but you also have 11 cameras around you. There's a whole orchestra behind you. There's a budget.
Exactly. It's all on you.
Down on you. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah. So kudos to her for pulling it off. And like, as we can see, she pulled it off in spades.
She definitely did. Make sure to go check out the performance May 12th. We have all the links you need to connect with Eliana down below. And shout out to her for taking the time to share her story with us. It was definitely very interesting and enlightening as well. And thank you guys for tuning in to this brand new episode of the Innersleeve Music Podcast right here on SoundMojo and Mojo TV. Make sure to go subscribe to the SoundMojo YouTube channel for new uploads almost every single day. We have community tab posts, shorts, and much, much more. So make sure to come say hello. Also drop us a line on social media at SoundMojo, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter. We will get in touch with you guys and respond to all comments. Also stay tuned for weekly episodes of the show. And make sure to check into our audio platforms. That's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio. Wherever you can get your audio podcasts, you can find us on those platforms to catch us on the go. Thanks so much for tuning in to this brand new episode of the Innersleeve Music Podcast. We'll catch you guys next time.